Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 6th meeting of the Planning Board of Dobbs Ferry. I move that we open the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is 111 Lafergie, Lot 2. Do we have the applicant here? Online?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Nicholas Shariah here from Hudson Engineering for the applicant. Since the last time we were here, the plans are for the most part unchanged. We have made some adjustments to the stormwater systems, layout, and locations on both lots, as well as the erosion and control measures and tree protection in response to the landscape consultant's comments. We believe we have addressed these comments to their satisfaction. There are some additional recommendations and a few updates we need to account for in the tree replacement and landscaping plan. I've discussed this with Robert Sherwood, our landscape architect, and he will be updating his plans and resubmitting for review to address these outstanding items. If acceptable to the board, we would like to seek a resolution tonight for site plan approval on both lots. I can bring up the site plans again on both lots just for a quick review if you wish. But as I stated before, the plans are relatively unchanged from the last meeting.
Yeah, I don't think there's any need for that.
Okay.
I move that we open the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anthony, where are we with the engineering issues?
Engineering was basically addressed. There were just a couple of conditions in our last memo, just to include in the resolution.
Okay.
Nothing really outstanding.
Great. And Valerie?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Building department?
Nope.
Okay. So if we were to approve a resolution tonight with the agreement that you will conform to the landscape architect memo, would that be acceptable?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, Valerie, would you like to read the oh, members of the board, does anybody have any comments before I,
No.
you go ahead.
I do not.
Okay. All right. Oh, yes. Anybody from the public like to address this project?
Anybody online, Christine?
Okay, thank you. So I move that we close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Valerie, would you like to read the planning board memo, the resolution?
Sure. So there's technically two planning board resolutions. So, I mean, they're basically exactly the same thing, except one refers to lot 2 and then one refers to lot 1. So I'm just going to kind of summarize one of the resolutions opposed to going through all of them. But whereas the applicant is seeking site plan approval to construct a new one-family dwelling on lot 2, and then the other one will say lot 3 of a proposed 3-lot subdivision. So whereas the planning board conducted a duly noticed public hearing on February 6, 2025, and it was concluded on March 6, 2025, and those wishing to be heard were given the opportunity to be heard and provide written comments. So a couple of things just in terms of findings. You're just recognizing that the planning board adopted a negative declaration on November 7th, 2024 for this project. So you're just acknowledging that that declaration still stays in effect. That this application requires a reservation that the board, in accordance with section 352J, reservation of parkland, that a park cannot be suitably located on the property, requiring payment of a fee in accordance with the master fee schedule for one additional residential unit. And so now, therefore, be it resolved, the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for site plan approval is granted subject to the following. The approved plans, it refers to plans last revised August 26, 2024. And then it refers to the Hudson Engineering plans dated last revised February 14th, 2025. And then specific conditions that are required before signing of the site plan All outstanding items for stormwater maintenance, and engineering items need to be to the full satisfaction of the village engineer, that all the applicant must pay any outstanding consultant fees, that the applicant must revise the submitted plans to address all outstanding comments from Nolan Landscape Architects memo dated March 4th, 2025, and that the applicant would be required to meet all the tree replacement requirements per 300-51I of the zoning code. And then a couple other things. Before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the recreation fee must be paid. However, there is a contingency in there that if the recreation fee has not already been collected under the subdivision approval. Because in your code, it's either site plan approval or subdivision approval, so it's under both resolutions. And then, other than that, that's all that I have.
Okay, now do we need to vote for each lot separately?
Yes, because each one was a different application.
Okay, I make the motion for Lot 2. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I make the motion for Lot 3. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now the AHRB
Yeah,
resolution.
so again, we have one for Lot 2 and one for Lot 3, and it's just whereas the applicant is seeking AHRB approval, whereas the AHRB is familiar with the site, and now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for AHRB approval is granted subject to the following, and then it specifically refers to the architectural plans last revised August 26, 2024.
Okay, I make the motion for Lot 2. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I make the motion for Lot 3. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing for 28 South Washington Avenue. I move that we open the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm Jesse Reiser, owner, architect, and this is Tyler Armstrong, who works with us, also architect. I just need to,
A brief update to the plans to address the comments from the landscape.
yeah, we basically are now in accordance with the Hudson Engineering suggestions about removing all of the trees associated with the accessory building, the storage shed, and following the suggestion of the landscape consultant, we're adding, 18 new trees according to their suggestion. So we want to be in complete compliance with the landscape consultant.
I mean, you do have the option to pay in lieu if you choose to
No.
do so.
Might as well have the trees, right?
Yeah.
The trees are nice.
You all remember the project.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the new updated site plan. We did it yesterday after
After
the
we
comments.
received the comments.
So
yeah.
it slightly differs from what was submitted, the areas where it differs. So there's new and old on the right. So we added the 3 notes as requested by landscape architect with regard to tree protection and excavation. We also updated our tree replacement schedule, again, following their suggestions. They've revised down the aggregate diameter to 88 because they removed the 6 inches. We also followed that, which leaves us with 44 inches. We're planning on replacing it with 45 based on the mix of 3 native plants. So we took the landscape architect's advice and replaced the Japanese dogwood, which is naturalized but not native, with the native Florida dogwood. We've added alternate leaf dogwood, which is also North American native. And we've added 1 more eastern white pine, which is native to the Northeast.
So would you be willing to let us add a statement in the resolution to saying you will conform to the new memo, just because, we all got this 2 days ago, so.
Yes.
If you're willing to have that statement added to the resolution, we can go ahead, we can proceed at this.
That would be perfect.
Absolutely.
That would be perfect.
Is there anyone here who'd like to speak to this application? Christina, anyone online? I think I did.
Did you?
I didn't?
No, you did.
Did I?
Yeah.
Who's second?
Screwed up on my own. Okay, Christina, no? Okay, is there anybody on the board that would like to speak with this? Okay, Valerie, we have a resolution?
Yep.
Well, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so the first is the site plan. So whereas the applicant is seeking site plan approval to build an accessory shed, the property is located at 28 South Washington. So I'm going to go back to now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for site plan approval is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. And again, it refers to the site plan from Hudson Engineering dated December 12, 2024, and then the site plans by Jesse Reiser of RUR Architects dated February 12, 2025. And then the specific conditions refer to the applicant must revise to the submitted plans based to address all outstanding comments from Nolan Architects dated March 4th, 2025. And then the applicant must adhere to the tree replacement requirements of section 300-51I.
Okay, I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
AHRB?
Yes. AHRB, where the applicant is seeking AHRB approval to build an accessory shed. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for architectural and historic review approval is granted subject to the following. And then again, it refers to the site plans by RUR Architect, last revised February 19th, 2025.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Next item on the agenda was 94 Ashford Avenue, which has been adjourned until April 3rd, 2025 meeting. After that, we've got 200 Ashford Avenue. Is the applicant here to present? Sorry? Oh, we're online? Okay.
Good evening. This is Shaheen Badali. Can you hear me?
You're a little low. Is there any way to maybe move the mic closer or?
Is this better?
Oh,
Yes.
much better, yes.
Okay, great. I'll hold the mic right
Probably
here.
go
Thank you.
halfway between, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
I'm going to share my screen if it's acceptable.
Yes.
So we have before you a revised site plan from the last time we were here. I do want to thank both the board and the building department for really helping us in drafting what I hope is a much more a better proposal. We've severely reduced the amount of lot coverage that's now proposed while maintaining the same amount of parking that was previously displayed. So just to briefly run the board through it, essentially, we previously had the parking spaces all along the side yard against the street. And now we have these 3 spaces against a walkway behind the building. And we have another space over here towards the backyard. We did receive commentary from engineering. And I do want to make the board aware that we did submit an updated survey, which is here on this first page. And I will as well submit it separately, signed and sealed for the board's consideration. And we have also made a modification to the plan where we will remove the vinyl fence proposed and strictly propose this. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Along the street, we would propose a combination of the masonry pillars with this steel fencing against the 2 neighbors' rear yards, which are to the left and to the top of this site plan here, so along this rear yard and this side yard, we would propose just strictly the steel fencing without pillars. That's due to the fact that there's an existing neighbor's fence adjacent to the property line, and so we would have a need to install it essentially against it. Other than that, the plans were just updated, you know, for the lighting and for the trash location, based on this new site plan. Just gonna flip over here. So we're showing the light just on the back of the building here. There's a specification displayed at the top of the page here. As well as just, you know, a modification to the drainage system based on the new layout. And with that, if the board has any questions or commentary, please let me know.
I have a question about the trash. The location where it's at, is that being picked up by the local DPW? And if so, how do they access that if a car is parked in that space?
So it's a great question. It is my understanding that the applicant is seeking to maintain DPW trash, but that the building would bring the trash out to the street on the trash day. So I don't believe there's a desire to have the trash picked up down this walkway. There is a walkway here, though, that does lead from the sidewalk. So I'm just going to bring my arrow over here. So this would be the sidewalk, and there's a walkway that does lead to the trash. But the intent would be to take the trash out to the street on those days.
So there's a maintenance person on site that would do that?
Not every day, but there would be trash taken out to the street on the trash days.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Anthony, do we have open issues?
Yeah, I would say mainly the issues in our memo should be, maybe when they're back, the engineering issues should be addressed maybe in a memorandum from their engineer, just, you know, pointing out how they've addressed each item, because I don't think a lot of those items have yet been fully addressed on the plan.
If we were to call for a public hearing at the next meeting, would you be prepared?
So I think just that this is one that has to get referred back to
Oh, the ZBA.
ZBA. So this is really here for referral, so they can go back to the ZBA, get their variances, and then come back
And then
for a
come
site
back.
plan.
Right.
And the variances are for?
Yeah, can you review again what the variances are for?
The variances are, the applicant is proposing for minimum lot area per dwelling unit. The applicant's proposing 1,742 square feet per dwelling unit, where 2,500 square feet is required. The maximum lot coverage, the applicant is proposing an impervious coverage of 67.4%, where 54% is required. And then the applicant is proposing a lot width of 48 feet, where 50 feet is required.
And also the parking, because the parking's within 10 feet of the property line now in the new plan.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Well, the new plan appears to be a big improvement in my opinion.
Yes.
So what's the structure for sending a recommendation to the CBA?
So, I mean, you can talk about it and then just, you know, pass like a quick vote on it, and then I'll take notes, and then I'll provide them a memo noting what your concerns were, or recommendations specifically were for this project.
But do we still, I guess, Don's question, do we still have a public hearing? We can go ahead and call for a public hearing for the next?
No, I would suggest waiting, because they have to reapply to the ZBA.
Okay,
And by the next ZBA meeting won't be till April after your planning board.
okay.
Any comments from the board about approving or recommending these zoning variances?
The coverage is 13% over.
I would support it.
What do you think, Rob?
I would support it. They made a big change to the
Okay.
site plan. I think they tightened it up about as much as they can. I think overall it's a good thing, what they're trying to do for the building, and
Right.
so I would,
So let's
I'm
make a
comfortable
recommendation.
with it.
I'm on board with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too.
Peter?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we recommend the variances to the zoning board of appeals. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Is that enough for you, Valerie, to proceed?
Sure.
Okay.
Is that enough for you?
Thank you. Thank you all.
Sweet.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right. The next item is 33 Main Street, which is adjourned until the April 3rd meeting. After that, we've got
Eldon?
88 Belden Avenue. Do we have someone to present to that?
You have to turn sideways to see these. Yeah, where's the?
I'll just share this screen.
You can't reverse it, huh? You can't flip it.
It's a PDF you can make too.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh,
Just try right-clicking, maybe?
thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Pang. I work with Stephen Seacon Architect, and I'm representing Michelle and Jenna on their project at 88 Belden Avenue, seeking planning and AHRB approval. So we're proposing a rear one-story addition and expansion of an existing patio at 88 Belden Avenue. So again, for context, this is the existing house. Belden's here across the street from the golf course. Our proposal, shaded, is a one-story addition, approximately 400 square feet, and expanding a patio, concrete patio, approximately 200 square feet. Again. So this is the 3D view. So the 400 square foot addition, it's housing a family room for Michelle and Jenna and their young child, so they can get more usable space in their house. The patio addition right here is concrete, and the materials of the proposed addition are to match existing. So the house is vinyl siding. The addition will be the same vinyl siding. The trim and the windows also AZEK trim to match the existing. The roof, which is an asphalt roof, is also to match. There are 4 skylights on either side, and there's a new chimney for a fireplace that we'll be proposing as well. I'll go back to the site plan. So we're also proposing some drainage measures to take the runoff from the roof and the concrete patio. So the gutters will drain into 2 dry wells, and in addition, there's a trench drain for the concrete patio. So we're proposing 2 dry wells in the rear of the yard. We received a memo from the engineer today with some comments that we'll be addressing for the next meeting. They're not reflected in today's presentation. If you have any other questions, happy to answer them.
So I'm sorry, the scope of the project is just this rear sunroom area
That is,
and the patio?
that is correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to do too.
What are the engineering questions? Well, our comments are relatively minor, just some clarifications on the calculations, how they were performed, but I think in general, it looks pretty good in terms of the stormwater. Thank you.
If the board is interested in potentially waiving site plan approval for this particular application, I do have an AHRB resolution
What about a planning board resolution?
No, because if you are going to give site plan approval, then you have to have a public hearing. If you're going to waive the requirement for site plan
You
approval.
don't need it.
Right.
How does the building department feel about this?
Let's avoid away from this small.
Seems like a pretty small project. that-
Yep.
Is anyone here for this project? You are? Would you like to come up and speak?
I live behind property on Maple Street.
You'd have to go up to the mic, sir, and just say your name.
I don't really.
Well, we don't want to waive the project if there's neighboring concerns.
Right.
Right.
No, from what I can see here, my name is Paul Kaplan, I live at 87 Maple Street. So directly behind this property, facing Maple Street, is my property. Most of that area is sort of a patio at this point, am I right? And it looks like you're expanding the patio to the left. So there'll be a little more pavement there than there was. That's correct. Right. But assuming that it doesn't require particular variances, I don't know.
We're
that
not
I
going
have
to
any
waive it if it
objections.
doesn't conform to village code.
What?
We're not going to waive it if it doesn't support,
Then
conform
we
to
would
village
have a
code.
public hearing.
Right, right. But it seems like a reasonable use of something that will fit into an existing backyard without coming too close to the property line. In any case, there's a height shift at the back of the property line. So I'll see it from the back of my house, but no more than a detail of the house that is already there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, if you do want time to review the project, we will call for a public hearing, but if you're okay with it, I just want to confirm that.
I think I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm willing to waive it.
Mr. Board, you too?
Yeah.
Seems small enough and
And it's
The
a
neighbors
nice-
are on
I think
board.
it's a nicely designed project.
okay, so I make the motion that we waive the site plan approval for this project. We have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
And Valerie, would you like to read the AHRB resolution?
Sure. Whereas the applicant is seeking AHRB approval to complete a rear single-story addition, patio expansion, and drainage to upgrade to a single-family home. Property is located at 88 Belden Avenue. Now therefore be it resolved, the AHRB of the Village of Dobbs Ferry determines that based upon the findings and reasoning set forth below, the application for AHRB approval is granted subject to the following, and it specifically refers to the site plans dated, or actually it's site plans by Stephen C. Kahn. The date is actually undated, and it lists each one of the sheets out.
I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 87 Grandview Avenue, which is adjourned to the April 3rd meeting. The last item on our agenda is the Knoll. I'd like to thank the members of the public for their response last month. It was very detailed and helpful in understanding the challenges of this project. We'd like to start with motion and some legal action items on our list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As everybody knows well, one of the issues that's been raised throughout the planning board's review of this application is with respect to title to the properties. Accordingly, the village's consultants and I thought and recommended to the board that they obtain their own title report. The applicant is preparing theirs. I believe they still have some documentation to provide, but we thought it would be beneficial for the board to have its own title report. So we've drafted a resolution authorizing the engagement of a title expert, and if you'd like, I could read that into the record. Whereas in accordance with the powers conferred by the Dobbs Ferry Zoning Code Section 300-16B12, the Planning Board has determined the need to retain an expert to complete an independent review of title records and related documents and prepare a report to assist with the review of pending applications by Hillside Street LLC. Whereas the planning board has, 1, identified a qualified title expert, 2, has received a written proposal setting forth an estimate to complete the scope of services as set forth, 3, will proceed to retain this expert, and 4, hereby authorizes the building inspector to request that the village take any and all appropriate actions in connection with the engagement of this expert. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees, Planning Board hereby retains the services of First American Title of 550 Mamaroneck Avenue, Harrison, New York, to complete the scope of services in accordance with the attached proposal, and there's a short proposal attached, to assist in the conduct of its official business, which shall be paid for by the applicant in accordance with Article 16 of the section of the Village Code. And finally, resolve that this resolution shall take effect immediately. And we would ask for a motion and a second, and then a roll call, which I'll...
Before we vote, Laura has recused herself from this project.
Oh, yep.
And Chris is elevated to full member from...
Forgot. Yeah.
Okay, so I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Let me just, I don't want to do a roll call vote, just...
Oh, okay.
on the
Sure.
Go ahead.
So you made the motion?
Yes.
And Chris made the second? Okay. Mr. Brosnahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Winder?
Here.
Mr.
Yes.
Stower?
Aye.
And Chairman Hale?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now we will provide that to the village clerk, and it'll be available in her office. Also, to follow up our last meeting, there were obviously a lot of people here, a lot of comments were made, and a lot of issues were raised, which are, I think are helpful, again, to the board's review of this application. And that resulted in our providing additional comments to the applicant in an email by which we listed a number of the items that we felt need to be addressed. There was an initial submission by me listing the following items, and I'll read it for the public just because you're here tonight, and it'll be filed with the village clerk, but we had discussed the following items with the applicant, which are as follows. 1, will the retaining wall in the Hammerhead parcel block access to and from the adjacent undeveloped lot, which is otherwise landlocked? Will the retaining walls along the roadway impede access to other lots that are adjacent to the proposed roadway? To what extent will the proposed project comply with the road standards set forth in Village Code 300-36, and will this require any variances? There is a significant stormwater swale proposed to be installed on a portion of the proposed roadway. How will that operate, and who will be responsible for its maintenance? Are there any legal impediments to the installation and operation of that swale? Let's see, I know this has gone back and forth, but please provide legal support for use of the center line of the knoll for zoning purposes as opposed to the lot lines. Also, what variances might be required under both scenarios? 6th comment is, was there any legal impediment to the applicants purchasing certain of the subject lots from the town of Greenberg? That's a question that was raised, and we'd like the applicant to answer that. And can you provide copies of any of the town's documents authorizing such sale? And finally, do the conservation easements over lots 146, 145, and 144 have any bearing on development of the roadway? And those are the extent of the questions that I've raised based upon your comments and the discussions that followed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Valerie,
Yes.
you have a number, you have a list as well, and we're going to do some work on the secret issue, right?
Yes. So I'm going to go through the list of items that we've already requested from the applicant back in January. And then I'm going to go through the public's comments dealing with the different environmental topics as well as their requests or comments on the seeker forms themselves. So we'll just go through, I'm going to kind of summarize what the information we've already requested from the applicant. And then when we hit each one of the topic areas, I'll talk about it, get direction from the board, and then we'll go to the next one. And you all have copies of the memo, paper copies of the memo, so you can follow along. And for the public, it's already posted online if you're interested in looking at it. All right, so we specifically, or the board specifically deliberated in its January meeting on a revised Part 2, and information was specifically sent to the applicant requesting the following. You wanted more additional details and studies on stabilization of steep slopes, excavation required from the site, methods of removal and site stabilization, methods of erosion and sediment control, and stormwater management, construction phasing, duration of construction and truck traffic, landscaping and site restoration, visual impact analysis, consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, traffic analysis of the proposed action, including the ability of the roadway to accommodate additional housing and emergency access within the approved subdivision, for the applicant to discuss open space and neighborhood characteristics and how the proposed action will impact the overall characteristics of the neighborhood, and discuss if any aesthetic impacts to the Jurian estate or improvements to access to the estate itself. Also, the board requested additional information on or asked the applicant to revise Part 1 with the following adjustments. And the Part 1 is the applicant's document where they identify the types of potential impacts. And one was C2, which is adopted land use plans, whether there's a comprehensive plan for the proposed area and any specific recommendations. And you asked the applicant to check yes to that. D1E, will the proposed project be constructed in multiple phases? We specifically asked the applicant to provide final clarification on this issue. And E2D needed to be filled out. Also, we asked the applicant to confirm that Part 1 assumes the impacts of constructing all 4 houses, and if not, that the EAF Part 1 is amended to include the impacts of constructing all 4 houses. So to date, none of these items have been addressed by the applicant. And so this was all done in January. February, we did not have any additional information from the applicant. And then the public hearing was opened on February 6th. So the public actually had a number of environmental impact questions, and so I'm going to go through the topic areas, and then I'm going to talk to the board about whether they've been addressed or haven't been addressed as part of the additional information request. So the first was flooding and stormwater. The public had concerns with stormwater retention basins, whether the basins would prevent flooding, also concerns of future flooding from the project. And again, the board already requested additional information from the applicant on its method of erosion and sediment control and stormwater management. And this project also requires a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So I believe, based upon the additional information that was already requested from the applicant and has yet to be provided and will be reviewed very carefully by the village engineer, we believe that this is being taken care of based upon the current requests. And I just want to clarify, because I'm sure Anthony would say, the applicant has provided some information already on the stormwater, but we are requesting additional information. The second is the aesthetic resources impact. There was concern from the public on that, and the board has already requested a visual impact analysis of the proposed project. In addition, the board requested the applicant provide information on the aesthetic impacts of the Jurian estate and also improvements to access to the estate. So we believe, based upon the initial information request at this point, that should cover the information on the aesthetic resource impacts. Now, once the applicant provides this information to the board, if you have additional questions or additional information is needed, we'll review it at that time. But for the first step, if I was going to respond to that, I would say that a visual impact analysis would be required, as well as, information on the aesthetic impacts, and both have been requested so far. With traffic, the public brought up site distances from neighboring driveways, from the proposed road, traffic impacts of the new development, and safety concerns from the new development and the roadway. And again, the board has requested a traffic analysis, including information on the ability of the roadway to accommodate additional housing and emergency access within the approved subdivision. One of the things that I did want to highlight is that the board could also specifically request a site distance analysis of the roadway. While that typically is part of, your engineering plans and stuff like that, we can make a specific request to the applicant so they know that that is required no matter what to submit that information.
I'd like to see that added if that's, does the board agree?
Yes, I agree.
And the one other thought that has been raised through several of the correspondence things that have been submitted
Yeah.
is there's this issue of not just the truck scheduling, but, well, I guess it is covered here under construction.
Yeah, that's the
Traffic noise,
construction,
okay,
yeah.
sorry. All right.
All right, so we're going to add that item to the list, please.
Yeah, this traffic piece, I was really focusing on the actual impact of the project itself.
Right,
not
okay,
the
now I'm
construction.
okay, got it.
So then the next, was there any other comments on that before we go? Okay. So the next environmental impact was construction. So the public brought up concerns with traffic, noise, rock removal, air particulate matter impacts, damage to critical root zones and trees on neighboring properties, damage to neighboring houses during construction. And then the public also requested specific truck scheduling. So the board already requested the applicant to provide information on stabilization of steep slopes, excavation required from the site, methods of removal, site stabilization, methods of erosion sediment control and stormwater management, construction phasing, duration of construction, and truck traffic. So if the board wanted to, you could also ask the applicant to provide additional information on air particulate matter and methods to prevent damage to critical root zones, trees on neighboring properties, and neighboring houses during construction.
There was also a question raised in recent correspondence about staging.
Right, so that would be part of your construction phasing. And so
Okay.
they would have to provide and also methods of rock removal. So that's part of the construction phasing, they would usually show the
Where
construction
they're-
staging.
Okay.
Right. But we can note that specifically so that, again, it's there in the record that you're specifically making sure that any construction phasing also includes construction staging.
I would, just
Okay.
because it's raised by the public.
So the next was concerns of animals and trees and concern about tree canopy, tree removal, and impacts on animals. So the board already requested additional information from the applicant regarding landscaping and site restoration. The village's landscape consultant is reviewing the tree removal and planting plans. However, the board could ask the applicant to undertake a species and habitat site assessment in the area of the proposed disturbance. The environmental assessment form has not identified any habitats for threatened or endangered species, nor is that site known for threatened or endangered species. However, the board could ask the applicant to undertake a species and habitat site assessment of the areas of disturbance if you'd like.
Say so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots to jiggle in there.
Also, can I go back just one second to the construction thing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I would be completely unqualified to review any of the things we're asking for. Is that something, Anthony, that you feel you can, like, if they, like, in terms of
Sure.
construction staging
Yes.
and truck movements and all that kind of stuff, that's something we would
Yeah, I
look to you?
think we could, all of us, the consultants,
Okay.
got it, our various expertise.
Okay.
On that same thing, on the construction portion, there's a last line here, the board could also ask the applicant to provide additional information on air particulate matter, methods to prevent damage to critical root zones, trees on neighboring properties, which I can certainly understand the concern there, and neighboring houses during construction. So in the past, we have definitely asked for, engineering surveys prior to rock chipping.
Right.
And then, photographs of foundations, that sort of thing. So I'd like to see that added, if that's not already in there. And then,
So, I mean, just for clarification, are you asking that would be like a condition as opposed to, because in the past, we've had the applicants do that work after they get their approvals, not prior to the approvals.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it has
Okay,
to be. I
okay.
just want to make sure it gets
Right, it
on the
gets
list. It should, I
identified,
think
yep.
that's important. And the other thing that I'm not quite sure how to deal with is there are trees that are close to the proposed private road, and their drip lines overlap that road, I believe.
Yeah, that was really where we're getting at, is the critical root zone.
Yeah, the critical root zones. And if you're going to run, large dump trucks there, is there any way to protect those tree roots systems from compaction and eventually killing the tree?
Right, and that's part of, that'll be part of the additional information methods to prevent damage to critical root zones. And then you have Suzanne, who's your landscape architect, and she's an arborist as well, and she'll be able to review that
Okay.
for those issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other questions on the environmental? All right, so then there are the seeker process and form comments. So first, a couple members from the public requested a positive declaration. And basically, I think we talked about this before, that ultimately this board is going to have to provide either a negative declaration or positive declaration. Positive declaration would begin an environmental impact statement process. A negative declaration would effectively end your seeker process, but that cannot take place until the project basically incorporates any environmental impacts that get raised during the review process. The project would have to incorporate, the mitigation would be part of the project. So ultimately, once the project gets fully vetted, that this board felt comfortable enough to be able to provide a negative declaration on this project.
Okay, but we don't have to make that decision until we get the response from the
That is
applicant?
correct, and that's why I was saying, I think at this point, it's too soon in the process to make any decision one way or the other on this, because there is a lot of outstanding information that we're asking from the applicant, and once we get that information, then we can review it again and then have that discussion. The second is, there was requested changes from no to small impact to moderate to large impact for rock or construction that would take place more than 1 year or multiple years on your Part 2 EAF. So in the revised Part 2, just to let this board know, and that was sent to the applicant on January 14th, the board already identified the bedrock impacts as moderate to large, so that was already taken care of. And then the proposed project will take 24 months to construct. This item is still identified as having a small impact in Part 2. However, if the board wants to consider moving that to a moderate to large impact, you can. The overall requested information from the applicant would not change, because we've already asked for a lot of information on the construction aspects, and then also we asked the applicant to provide more information and clarification on whether the project was going to be constructed in multiple phases or not. So we've already asked for more information on construction and construction duration and phasing. So that's up to the board if you want to just keep it as is, or if you want to shift that comment over to the type of impact from no to small, which is what I have now, which is more indicating that small impact versus moderate to large impact.
I mean, what are the practical implications for the applicant and for us?
So the only, the practical implications are in the Part 3, the applicant, you're supposed to provide more information on anything that was identified as a moderate to large impact. We've already requested that information no matter what. So we can move that over, but the result of the analysis that's being requested isn't going to change.
So there's no additional workload for the applicant because we've already requested
We've already
information?
requested a lot of information.
Then let's move it over to
Okay.
medium.
Sure. Okay. So number 3, the requested check yes for the impacts on surface water to Part 2 EAF due to the Sawmill River. Again, we just noted that the project is actually approximately 0.44 miles away from the Sawmill River. And there are no wetlands or water bodies on the project site, so we don't recommend this particular item to be changed.
Does the the detail around this, determining the impact on surface water, specifically cite the things you just did about wetlands and like whether there are,
Yes.
so those are prescribed.
Those are prescribed as part of that response in the part 2.
So it doesn't mean runoff, running into somebody's backyard and killing their grass.
No, there's other impacts associated with that. And the applicant specific, I mean, not the applicant, the public specifically identified the Sawmill River as being the need for that. The public also requested a check yes for flooding impacts on Part 2 EAF due to being an area subject to flooding. So,
Sorry, are you using wetland definition? Are you using the new definitions that were just released in January?
that's correct.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
So the requested check yes for the flooding impacts on Part 2 EAF due to it being an area subject to flooding. So I provided you an image of how we already responded to the impacts on flooding. And so basically my response to this, or my suggested response to this originally was no, because of the fact that as you look below, the individual questions below is the proposed action may result in the development in a designated floodway, which the answer is no. The proposed action may result in a development within a 100-year floodplain. The answer is no. The proposed action may result in a development in a 500-year floodplain. The answer is no. The proposed action may result in or require modification of existing drainage patterns. For the most part, like the answer is no, because they're going to be providing stormwater retention as a result of that. And really, this is really focused on more, your like surface waters and your flood areas prone to flooding. The proposed action may change floodwaters flow that contribute to flooding. Again, these aren't known as floodwaters, so the answer would be no. If there is a dam located on site of the proposed action, is the dam in need of repair, upgrade? And the answer is no. However, if the board, because this particular section of the EAF can also include lands that are known or prone to flooding that might not necessarily fall within a flood designated area. So if for some reason you wanted, and the public was saying that this area is prone to flooding or the neighborhood is prone to flooding, so if you wanted to check yes, then we would have to provide responses from A through F. And if that is the case, my recommendation would just be you would reply with no or small impact may occur to each one of the items from A through F. And I just wanted to, part of the reasoning for this is the proposed project in total is in total proposing to disturb 1.19 acres of disturbance and will create 0.47 acres of impervious surface.
Well, there's also a big factor of taking away the trees and the biomass that soaks up all that, sponges up all that floodwater.
Right, so it's not, that's stormwater runoff.
They have to
So
meet
there's a
all
difference
that.
between like floodwater and stormwater runoff, but yes,
It
and
seems
that's
like
part
our
of the.
concerns are primarily stormwater management. And
Right.
This is more floodplain stuff.
Right, so I mean, if you want to, you can acknowledge that the area is prone to flooding because of stormwater, and then say yes, and then I would just recommend then A through F would be no or small impact may occur, just because you actually have other projects in front of you that have had higher impervious surface, well, even just the last one, the amount of impervious surface coverage on like 200 Ashford Avenue. So my point is that I think the overall amount for this particular project is smaller in terms of impervious coverage that's going to be created and the amount of, and you're already going to have stormwater detention on the project site.
Right, I mean, overall, as with the other projects that we've had, they will be responsible for managing on-site any water
Yes.
right? The
Yeah.
net amount of water that comes off of this development when it's done, assuming they build the approved stormwater management plan, is unchanged. Is that correct?
It's mitigated in the way that the rate of runoff is less in the post-developed condition. So that doesn't change whether you say yes or no here. And this is more geared towards, developing in a floodplain and taking away like flood storage volume in a floodplain. That's kind of like what these questions are geared towards. So they're not in that kind of floodplain. And it doesn't affect in any way what they have to do with stormwater management and stormwater detention, and that still holds.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that this is particularly applicable to this project.
Yeah.
Anybody else on board want to,
I'd just like to make sure that the people aren't flooded.
Right, well, and that's where we do, like I said before, we have asked, we're specifically asking them to provide stormwater management, right, and all that's gonna be looked at very carefully.
so unless the board members disagree, I'm going to, let's say we're not going to change that.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so the next was check yes for impacts on plants and animals in the Part 2 EAF. All right, so again, I provided you an image of what we submitted so far for the Part 2. And again, this was my suggested response to this was based on the responses from A through I. Now, the board just asked to have a site assessment, wildlife and habitat, an actual site assessment of wildlife and habitat. So if for some reason that particular report comes back differently, then we can modify this, right? But if the board that says the proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. So if the board decides, yes, you want to check that off because technically there will be a loss of flora or fauna, all of the items from A through I are actually no's. And I can read them all for you, but one says the proposed action may cause a reduction in population or loss of any individuals of any threatened or endangered species as listed by the New York State or federal government. And right now, the EAF is coming back as there's nothing identified on this site.
But how do we know that? Like, I don't.
Well, that's why you're gonna do that, you've already requested that site assessment. So if that comes back that there happens to be something, then you would change this, right?
Okay.
But right now, the answer is no. The answer would also be technically right now, based on the information we have, may result in reduction of habitat used by any rare, threatened, or endangered species. Right now, this also, C would be no in terms of may cause reduction in population or loss of individuals of any species of concern or conservation need. The D says the proposed action may result in a reduction or degradation of any habitat used by any species of concern. Again, that's all no. The
Right,
EAF
as listed by New York State or the federal government.
Exactly. The proposed action may diminish the capacity of the registered natural landmark to support biological community it was established to protect. The answer is no for that. The proposed action may result in the removal of ground disturbance in any portion of a designated significant natural community. The answer is no for that. It's not designated. The proposed action may substantially interfere with nesting, breeding, foraging, or overwintering habitat for predominant species that occupies that use or project site. And there have been no predominant species that have been identified. And then the proposed action may requires the conversion of more than 10 acres of forest or grasslands for any other regional or locally important habitat. The answer to that is no. And then the proposed action involves use of herbicides or pesticides specifically for commercial, industrial, or recreational projects. And the answer is no.
Can I make a suggestion that maybe would provide a comfort level around is it possible can we request, let's say, going back to the flooding one, can we request that the applicant in their storm management plan address on a line-by-line basis the line-by-line issues raised in the EAF under 5, impact of flooding. And similarly for this, ask the applicant to, as you said, we're asking to that, can we specifically refer to the, whatever it is, 8 or 9 items listed under.
We can, if
on
you'd like to do
plants
that.
and animals, and say, these are the things that we expect to see in your assessment?
Yes, we can have them respond to all those.
That would make me feel more comfortable at saying no, passing on no for now.
Okay.
On the flood and on this.
Okay.
Because, as you said, we're asking them for these other certifications, but if we could specifically cross-reference these items, then that would give me a comfort level that they're addressing all the things that we would have if we'd said yes.
Okay, I don't, I don't see anything here that's an obvious yes, but.
I don't either, but.
If it makes everybody more comfortable, that's a small enough ask.
What about the trees? Removal of trees.
Well, there wouldn't be any development if you couldn't remove trees, and we have a tree code to address that issue.
All right, so the next one is requested check yes for impact on open space and recreation because people use the knoll for recreation and it is identified in the vision plan. Again, the image below is, we specifically checked no, mostly because the proposed action may result in loss of recreational opportunities or reduction of an open space resource and as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. And this site is not specifically identified as like recreation or open space, meaning like it's going to be preserved open space. However, if the board were to check yes, A through D would need responses, and A through D as the proposed action may result in the impairment of natural functions or ecosystems provided by an undeveloped area, including but unlimited to stormwater storage, nutrient cycling, and wildlife habitat. The proposed action may result in the loss of current or future recreational resources. The proposed action may eliminate open space or recreational resources in an area with few such resources, and the proposed action may result in the loss of an area not used informally by the community as an open space resource. So if you were to check yes for that, I would recommend checking no to small impact. Again, because the proposed project in total would create 0.5 acres of impervious surface and disturb 1.19 acres of land. And technically, when people are on those properties, they are private properties, so they're not necessarily government-owned property.
So,
No, but item A, I mean, wouldn't every project actually have some impact?
That's correct.
And item D, it's private property, but it is being informally used as an open
Right,
space
so
resource.
if you want to check, so that's why I was saying, if you want to check yes, then I would say that there'd be, my recommendation would be no to small impact, meaning there could be a small impact that would occur for all of those as opposed to a large impact.
It seems to me like A and D apply here. Does anybody on the board feel differently?
I agree. And I also, Valerie, we talked about this and I totally understand it. I do feel like even though it didn't fall into any specific land use category, we did in the vision plan highlight, we colored that area as a feature.
Right.
Not as, I know we didn't zone it and so on, but
Yep.
I always bristle a little bit at the idea that it's true, it's not in any adopted municipal open space plan, I get that technically, but I also feel like it was part of that neighborhood, the, description of the characteristics.
So then we'll revise that to check yes, and then the other. Okay.
Great.
All right, the next was requested changes from no to small impact to moderate to large impact for critical environmental impact areas. So currently, questions A and B are checked small to no to small impact. I'm recommending that it stays as is because the proposed object will not reduce the quantity or quality of the resource or characteristic, which was the basis for the designation of the CEA, which is the Juring Estate. The proposed project's not located on or adjacent to the Juring Estate. So, because
Is
it's,
Is it not?
so it is, while it is near the preserved area for the CEA, it is not.
The swale touches the Juring Estate.
Yeah, well, let's, wait, we'll open the
The
hearing.
actual proposed project is not adjacent, directly adjacent to or within the, so
But
that's
you-
why it's a small, that's
But
why
you
I'm
have us,
recommending a small.
you have us checking, but you suggest, but I'm looking at the graphic here, it says yes for.
Yeah, it's already, yes. We've already acknowledged that that is a yes, that it's located, and we've already submitted that it's a small impact may occur. The public wants to change it to moderate to large impact.
I don't know how to assess that.
So, well, I would suggest assessing it by the two criteria below. The proposed action may result in a reduction in the quantity of the resource or characteristic, which was the basis of the designation of the CEA.
I mean, that one I agree is small impact. The second one, I'm not so sure, but we are 200 feet from the Juring Estate, right? It's the closest, something like that is the closest point of
Yes,
the project.
that's correct. And so that's why I had a small, again, small impact.
And what is the applicant required to do under this?
The applicant's not required to do anything, except that we already requested, the board has already requested additional information on the impacts to the aesthetic resources of the Juring Estate. So you've already asked for additional information associated with this.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
The requested check, no, on inconsistency with land use plans on Part EAF because it is inconsistent with the LWRP and vision plan. So again, this board had a larger conversation about this at the January meeting. The board decided to keep check no, but then also make a note that there was concerns for impact of the project in the neighborhood and open space characteristics identified in the vision plan, and that the applicant was to provide a discussion associated with that.
Right, so I would again, this is another, actually, this is where the thing I said earlier is more relevant about.
So if you wanted to, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, similar to what we've done elsewhere, if we stick with this, then I would again ask the applicant to
Okay.
address on a line item basis,
Sure.
A through G.
All right. So then the next one, or this is the last one.
I'm sorry, so
Yes.
17, we're going to move to yes, and we're going to do no or small impact, or?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I forgot to talk about that. So my recommendation on this would be no to small impact, because, again, each one, the proposed actions, land use components may be different from or in sharp contrast to the surrounding land use pattern. The issue there is the surrounding land use pattern is single-family development, and they're proposing single-family development.
By the way, can I just ask one other
Sure.
question? Sorry. Going back to the adjacency issue to the Juring Estate, are there industry standards for this kind of thing in terms of, or legal standards in terms of what's considered adjacent? 200 feet?
No, there's not.
Okay, that's our
Really in the opinion of the
judgment.
board, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, can we look at these? Because most of these seem like a stretch on 17.
Which one are you looking at?
Well,
Sorry, Alan?
right.
Well, if we look at them one at a time, the proposed actions, land use components may be different from or in sharp contrast to current surrounding land use pattern. I mean,
That would be a no.
That would be a no. The proposed action will cause permanent population of the city, town, or village to grow by more than 5%. That's a no. The proposed action is inconsistent with local land use plans or zoning regulations.
Now, that is the one where I personally have a more aggressive interpretation about what the vision plan said than.
But they're not talking.
Valerie agrees with.
Well, it's the vision plan, okay.
I
Land
think
use plans.
that counts,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
not zoning regulations, but land use plans, okay. Is inconsistent with county plans or other regional land use plans. I think that's a no. Proposed action may cause a change in the density of development that is not supported by existing infrastructure. That's valid. That's, you know,
That's
there's
a valid
concerns
question,
about
but that'll be-
Briary and,
That'll be for Anthony to,
Creating water and sewer.
yeah. Proposed action is located in an area characterized by low-density development and require new or expanded public infrastructure.
no.
Well, if sewer,
Well, we
water.
don't think.
you know,
Well,
that
we're gonna
kind of
find
stuff.
out, I guess, whether or not the water and sewer that are on the
Right.
street.
Proposed action may induce secondary development impacts. That one actually, you know, if they build that driveway up there or the private road, there are additional lots up there, right? So, yeah, so I can see moving this to yes,
So that's,
Okay.
that's for,
but maybe no or small impact may occur.
And the last is community character, where it says request to check yes on community character because the project does not protect natural spaces, concern about community services, and interferes with access to a resource. And again, this one was also, we had a lengthy discussion about this in January. So again, if the board were to check yes, questions A through F would need responses. And again, I feel like those would be probably no to small impact. The board did specifically note in its January response that there was concern for the impact of the project on the neighborhood and open space characteristics identified in the vision plan, and that you asked the applicant to provide a discussion associated with it. But if you were to say, the question is, the proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character. So if you were to say yes on that, then you would look at whether the proposed action may replace or eliminate existing facilities, structures, or areas of historic importance to the community. The proposed action may create a demand for additional community services. The proposed action may displace affordable or low-income housing in an area where there's a shortage of such housing. Proposed action may interfere with the use or enjoyment of officially recognized or designated public resources. Proposed action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character, and the proposed action is inconsistent with the character of the existing natural landscape.
Well, I mean, B seems pretty, like every development project would generate some demand for
Right.
schools, police, fire.
yeah, what about half?
Right, so I would recommend, if you're gonna move it to yes, then I would say no to small impacts.
B and F.
Yeah.
Right, but at the top, you know, that, yes. Okay.
I can ask them to provide a discussion on that.
And then you have a list of everyone's comments.
Right, I had a list of
s-
everyone's comments just for the
appreciate that.
board to understand.
Thank you, everyone, for making that comment.
Yeah,
All right, so then I'll revise the part 2 as instructed by this board, and then I'll send a revised memo over to the applicant, just letting them know the additional information we want more enumerated in the part 3.
thanks for doing this, and I appreciate
Yep.
you taking a kind of the, how can I say this? Less, maybe unpopular, but methodologically or defendable.
Go for it, Rob.
No, I'll just get sued.
Anyway, Valerie, that was great. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
thank you for doing that.
So before we open the public hearing, I'd like to ask people to, you know, we had this very long presentation last meeting. It was great. It helped generate all of what we just discussed. But please don't say the same things again, okay? Well, we're still in the process of collecting facts, information, asking the applicant to provide information. So we're not even close to making decisions yet. We're just trying to collect the information we need to make that. So if you have additional information that has not been presented yet, please come and do so. But what we don't need is the same thing over and over and over again, okay? That just doesn't help us with the process. So I move that we open we're also going to implement the same 3-minute time period for all comments Please respect that. Everyone would like to get home at some point this evening. I move that we open the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Do you have new items to present to us this evening?
I don't, just for the record, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Jacob Amir from Zarin and Steinmetz, and with me today is Dan Collins and Hudson Engineering. I don't have much. I'll defer to the public, obviously. I just want to mention to the board that we did receive comments both from Mr. Posen, those 8 questions that we're addressing, as well as comments from your village consultants that are very thorough, and we appreciate those, and we'll tackle all of those, of course. And we certainly do welcome this board obtaining an independent title company's analysis. I think that's going to be extremely helpful, obviously, for everybody's purposes, and the applicant is certainly ready and willing to provide whatever we have to share in order to make as full inquiry into the title and complete as possible. And whatever the title company needs and this board needs in that regard, we're certainly going to provide that, and we're going to continue to work towards that. I don't want to belabor it. I don't know if you have any questions for me or Mr. Collins. If not, I'm going to sit down and let the board come up, the public come up.
Okay, thank you. Are there members of the public that would like to speak to this application this evening?
Just a reminder, please say your name and address for the record.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Giuliano. I live on 93 Briary Road. I'm very concerned about the scope of this undertake, okay? I'm right border with the During estate, and back in the 2000, there was a builder from Canada, which the board here denied him doing anything. What is the reason now, this new developer, that going forward, entertaining it? I'd like some answers on that. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm concerned about the house that I built there. This huge tree, if they fall on my house, they're going to demolish my house. Who's responsible for these trees? I'm going to bring that to the board. So, in general, this whole thing here, it worries me on the impact that we're going to have on this Briary Road. So, I just wanted to express some concern. So, I would like to get some answers here. Where are we going? And, you know, so that we have some good decision to make here. So the impact that could create in this area, I haven't lived there since 2000, and I'm very, very worried about the traffic, the water that comes. I've been taking care of the land back there with the deers. You know, I take care of the deer too. I feed them.
Not good.
You know, and so they're like my buddies. So where are they going to go, these deers?
To my backyard.
You know the village is going to pay somebody to hunt those deer, right?
Oh, really?
Because there are too many of them, yes, and they're
Oh, yeah.
destroying the ecosystem.
Right.
They're cute, I get it, but.
So, but anyway, again, I like to get some answers. I've already had a tree fall for my neighbor, and he doesn't want to be responsible, that affected part of my house. And he doesn't want to take responsibility. So I'm going to have to sue him. So who do I sue if this other tree fell in my house? Who's responsible? It's a huge tree.
Well, the developers have insurance, and if something were to happen.
Yeah, but, you know, I know the developer pretty well. He said he was going to come and see me to my house and have a coffee and see what we're going to do with these trees. But he never did.
But we're asking,
Excuse me?
we're asking,
So I would
the
like.
questions that you're raising are
Yeah.
the ones that we just reviewed that we're asking of the developer.
Yeah, so to me is very, should be immediate, look into.
Yeah,
So,
we are. We are.
okay, so, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate. You're welcome.
Good evening, Marcus Solis, 90 Briary Road. Members of the planning board and consultants, thank you for your time again this month. Our group Protect the Knoll does have indeed another presentation before you. We will again be respectful of your time, and we will be not use this public hearing to rehash the points that were made, but the issues do remain. Many of the topics remain the same, but there is new information that we would like to share, and we will do so tonight. And we're happy that we have a number of different speakers joining us. It's a reflection of just how widespread the concern and opposition is to this project, not only just those living in the immediate area. And so during the last meeting, before the last meeting, Chairman Hale, you read off a large number of issues, repeated again by Mr. Posen, and all the outstanding issues remain, more than a dozen of them, and SECRA as well. So we know that public hearings are an opportunity for members of the community to give information, talk about how this is going to impact their quality of life, the effects on their property, but they're also meant to give residents the opportunity to counter or refute data, plans, claims, assurances made by the developer and his team, just as we did last month and just as we're going to do tonight. And because of that, Mr. Cordesi did not make a presentation tonight. All that information is outstanding, and we think that he's yet to respond to those issues because he's finding it hard to defend this project, or maybe he's hoping that the public hearing will be closed and then he'll submit information that will go unchallenged. And so we are respectfully asking that the public hearing be continued beyond tonight's meeting so that we could respond to his latest proposal and also to any of the SECRA issues that are outstanding, because the number of times that we heard no to small impact is frankly alarming and concerning. And with that, we'll get to our presentation. Thank you.
There's no question about that.
No, I can assure everyone here that the public hearing will be continued until the next meeting.
Totally, yeah.
Steve Sudak, 23 Highland Avenue, Dobbs Ferry. We'll go a little off script here. I'm going to try and help Mr. Posen out with this. To expand upon what I pointed out last meeting on all 4 lots where lot lines abut a street, the engineer has correctly indicated the building setback line from the lot line, which is located at the edge of the right-of-way. This is consistent with the village's definition of the lot line, Chapter 314 definitions, that reads as follows. Lot line, a line of record bounding a lot that divides one lot from another lot, or from a public or private street or any other public space. A single line bounding a lot from another lot or from a public or private street. The engineer has shown his building setback line drawn from the lot line, which divides the lot from the right-of-way. However, the engineer has also shown a fictitious second line drawn at the midline of the right-of-way, which he has used as a basis for calculating a fictitious inflated lot area presented in a table of completely fictional areas. The drawings are in conflict with themselves. When the planning board denies this application, they will be required to produce a finding of fact. In this case, the finding of fact will reveal that when the lot line is properly and consistently reckoned at the edge of the right-of-way and steep slope deductions are made, the lots are in fact undersized, as they have always been. Lot 153 is in fact undersized even prior to deducting steep slope. Deducting the steep slope per village law makes it even more undersized. This highlights yet another drawing conflict. While properly indicating a front yard setback line at the correct location, the mere indication of a building shown placed in an undersized lot is in fact a conflict. The drawing states one truth, the setback line, then states a lie in the form of a second property line, which is proven to be a lie by the first truth. The lie is then used as a basis to construct a fictional table of areas. The fictional table shows a fictional compliant lot area. Finally, based on lies and fiction, the engineer's drawing indicate a proposed house upon a non-compliant lot, indicating the front setback line, which lays bare the lie. These are extremely dangerous games for a licensed professional engineer to be playing. It's also important to note that the town of Greenberg knew Lot 153 was undersized when they offered it, and the applicant, who is after all a builder, also knew full well the lot was undersized. He also knew the steep slope law, which would render additional lots undersized. he's directing his engineer to redraw fictional property lines to use as a basis to artificially inflate lot areas only for the purpose of securing a building permit under false pretense for lots he knows are undersized. The lots areas presented are a lie. The code is clear on the definition of lot lines. The first drawings showing fictional lot areas should have been summarily rejected from the very beginning. Any subsequent revised drawings which persist in showing fictional lot areas should likewise be summarily rejected.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abel Baird, and I live at number 2 Summit Terrace. I'm here to talk about an important issue with the developer's plan. When someone wants to build something, they must follow our village code, rules that keep us all safe. These rules ensure that the land is actually safe to build on. In our village, there's a well-established code for steep slopes and streets. If the slope is too steep, it is not considered safe and it cannot be used for buildings and roads. The developer's plan does not meet the village's code requirements. Even an 8th grader can understand what the developer is proposing is not to code. The current plan for 14% slope is greater than the code's 10% allowed maximum. Also, the developer's calculations ignore Greenberg's legal data, the data that everyone has to use, and the math is inconsistent even within the developer's own site plans, as Stephen just pointed out for us. When this kind of work is handed in at school, the teacher usually takes a red pen and writes, "Work and evidence provided does not support the conclusion." Under New York law, the village is bound by legal precedent. A variance for building on the knoll was already denied, and this same future variance cannot be allowed. There is even a specific court case listed here, decided on by the highest court in New York State. It clearly states a developer who acquired property after the steep slope law was in effect had no right to build, period. The Dobbs-Ferry ZBA decision supported this legal decision to not allow for variance in cases like this, with the steep slopes of the knoll. It may be funny to hear me talk about law cases, as I am not a lawyer, but I guess my dad thinks I debate like one, so here we are. In summary, the law is clear. There is no legal basis for allowing this project. The developer's plans fail to meet the required safety standards for steep slopes, and we cannot ignore that, especially as the math doesn't add up right. Approving this project would not only break our own rules, but open the door for our community to have even more dangerous developments. Please do not put our safety and our future at risk with more dangerous steep slope roads in the neighborhood. Here's your call to action. For the sake of legal integrity and community safety and our future, the planning board must reject this project. Let's keep this simple. Let's just follow the rules and keep our community safe. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Hi, Graham Knoll, 21 Summit Terrace, Dobbs Ferry. I did not attend the last public meeting, so hopefully every word out of my mouth will be brand new and exciting and of use to the board. My colleague Matthew Scott Hanson is the chairman of the Dobbs Ferry Conservation Advisory Board, who spoke at the previous session. He spoke in his capacity as a village resident. Just for the record, I am also a member of the Conservation Advisory Board, but am here tonight speaking as a resident of the neighborhood near the knoll. I wanted to focus the board's attention specifically on the road being proposed to connect to the development site. And specifically the section of the village code dealing with the layout and design of roads and streets in the village. That's section 300-79. It includes 8 requirements with respect to layout and design of any street in the village. The requirements speak to, among other things, a road's permitted grade, its width, and turnaround requirements to ensure emergency vehicles can appropriately access the site. And these requirements are in place to ensure the safety and adequacy of any new roads built in the village. Because of the nature of the Knoll site, the road proposed to be built there would require variances for 6 out of the 8 layout and design requirements in the village code. The number of required variances in and of itself indicates that the road is likely deficient and would not be safe or appropriate for the site, as does the substance of such required variances. I don't think, do we have the slide, Jason? Yeah, there we go. This slide enumerates the deficiencies and describes the substantive impact and the variances required. Just a couple examples. The grade of the road would be too steep as it approaches the intersection with Briary Road, creating increased potential for accidents as vehicles attempt to slow down and enter the intersection, and especially in snowy and icy conditions. The road would be too narrow. We require 30 feet of width along with sidewalks to allow safe pedestrian passage. Proposed road would be only 20 feet without sidewalks. And under the village code, a road of this length would require a paved turnaround radius of 40 feet, which is significantly narrower turnarounds have been proposed in this case, rendering it more difficult for emergency vehicles to access and navigate the site and making the development less safe. I know I'm running out of time. The final point is just that as members of the board who have visited the site have seen and understand, there's already a lot of and not very safe streets in the area, so no reason to exacerbate the problem and allow this non-conforming road. Thank you.
Hi, Matt Carmody, 42 Luzerne Road. I'm here to talk to you about why the village code for streets matters for safety. A vehicle rounding a corner only has a certain amount of distance to stop. It may encounter a person crossing the street, and there is a calculation for that. It is called the stopping sight distance calculation. So in the case of the Knoll Road, a vehicle turning the sharp corner to enter the downslope to Briary Road would only have a certain amount of distance, and there are a lot of people already crossing on that side of Briary Road in front of where the access would be, because to get to the During Estate, you wouldn't want to be on the other side of the road. There's an intersection with Heather Way, which comes down at a very steep angle, and people don't walk on the side of the road there because they're not sure that vehicles are going to stop when they turn that hard left to go down Briar Road. Next slide, please. So the American Association of State Transportation Highway Officials, or AASHTO, has a policy on design, and in the latest guide, which is called the Green Book, there is a stopping sight distance calculation. The calculation for the village's speed limit of 25 miles per hour is on level ground 152 feet. If you incorporate a 14% grade, it adds 100 feet. So you can see that once a vehicle rounds the corner and has to stop for somebody crossing in front of the Knoll Road on Briary, they would not be able to make that stop. Next slide, please. So that calculation is for passenger vehicles. A vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating of 88,000 pounds, such as this 18 cubic foot dump truck, which would be hauling parts of trees and rocks and soil down that road, takes even longer to stop. So please make sure that the access road meets code. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to once again address you all. We may be repeating some safety concerns, but I ask you to look at that young man over there. That's my son. We live right next to what would be Paper Road. His safety when he plays outside, there's nothing more important to me. My name is Allison Eggleston, and I live at 98 Briary Road. I'm one of the many homeowners. If this is a private road, then I'm one of the co-owners of the private road. And I stand to suffer real negative consequence if the developer's plan were to be approved. Consequences that village codes are designed to avoid in the first place. Even as professionals well accustomed to looking at all sorts of building plans on a daily basis, there are many things that a line drawn on a paper will never be able to communicate. So I want to show you a view out of our windows. Go one more ahead. In these pictures, you can see that our lot line is very close to the southern wall of our home, 2 feet or less in some spaces. When we look out of our windows, we see arborvitae and not much else. Now, take a look out of my son Emmett's bedroom window. Believe me when I say that it is a gift to look out of these windows in every season. This open space brings health and well-being to my family and value to my property. If the developer's plan were to go through, this would vanish and be replaced with the wall of, you guessed it, arborvitae, ostensibly to spare us the view of a road that would be too close to our bedroom windows according to village code. It would block more than just the view of the road. It would leave us in a narrow chasm, our house wedged between 2 walls of fast-growing trees that would gradually block light and overwhelm our property. The developer's plan poses an actual threat to the integrity of my home and the safety of my family. According to the village code, we would be a non-compliant distance from a non-compliant road, turning us from a street-facing lot to a non-compliant corner lot. I quote our engineer, Mr. Davis, who spoke at the last meeting. Paper Street should not be built because it is an impossible matchup of a 100-year-old paper corridor, a steep rocky knoll in today's codes. The Paper Street alignment coupled with the underlying topography will not permit compliance. Period. End of story. No amount of engineering will. I can understand how variances may be warranted in some cases when building new infrastructure, cases where the benefits outweigh a small, carefully deliberated number of risks. But 18, I now wish to put some very important questions on the record, questions that I, as a resident and the most impacted by hypothetical approval, deserve full, complete, seriously considered, and code-based answers to. How many people would this development benefit, and how does that compare to the number of current residents who would be actively harmed or put at increased risk by this development? Does the village of Dobbs Ferry have a metric when granting variances that says what level of risk to life and limb and property is acceptable? The mechanized storm retention system, when that, how's the board going to ensure its continual proper functioning? The developer and his team seem ready to comply with modern codes that are within the realm of being practically and functionally met. I've heard them claim on a number of points that this 100-year-old set of lines on paper should be given a pass where they can't be. If I take my 100-year-old grandparent to the ER, I want them treated with 2025 medicine. If we as a village build new homes and infrastructure, we also have an obligation to follow the best practices of 2025. This project is no different. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle St. Victor Torres, and I live at 101 Briary Road. It is astounding to me that the proposal by Hillside Street LLC for development on the demapped paper street known as the Knoll is still being presented to this board, despite all the legal arguments, code violations, and moral issues that our group has raised via our attorney's letters, our group's individual letters, and now the ongoing public hearing. Many of these issues are strong enough on their own merit to have stopped this proposal from moving forward. Yet, to date, we still have not heard a single response from the village to any one of them. Do you have any idea how this makes us feel? So here we are, being asked to give additional objections to a proposal that is clearly not wanted by most of the village's citizens. Since you continue to want to hear more, let me give you something else to ponder. My husband and I ingress and egress, a 6-foot wide access easement on lot 147, along where it borders lot 137, upon which our home is located. For your edification, lot 147 is one of the lots owned by the developer and is on the lot which he intends to install the massive attenuation gallery that is critical to his stormwater management plan. In order to install this system as drawn, the developer will have to disturb the area upon which we are entitled access in such a way as to prevent us from doing so. We object to this and will not allow it to happen. Therefore, if you insist on continuing to permit the developer to present his proposal for development, you must direct him to re-engineer his stormwater management plan in such a way that our access rights will not be violated. On this next slide, we will not repeat again, but I just wanted the village to be aware that we are still and hope to get a response to our neighbors, Daniel and Rachel Vargas's property, and the fact that this 4-foot-high retaining wall would deny them access, legal access to their private property. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your service to our village.
Good evening. My name is Kirsten Keneally, and I live at 504 Broadway. My comments tonight and questions for you relate to the proposed project's large and destructive environmental impact. First is a question. Will you honor the 3 legally binding conservation easements for lots 144, 143, and 146, which expressly prohibit building, storage, deforestation, and construction, including grading and regrading, on land that is subject of this public hearing? Put another way, will you honor the existing contracts that the village has with the 3 lot owners and vote against, quote, any activity or use of the property inconsistent with the purpose of these conservation easements? Second, contrary to what Ms. Monastra said, some of her input this evening, the knoll is a critical, increasingly rare wildlife habitat. It is home to threatened and protected species and at least 2 species of special concern, including the eastern box turtle, the eastern fence lizard, I love them, and the bald eagle, a protected species under federal law. Will you ensure our village's adherence to all applicable wildlife protection laws and reject any proposals to build on the knoll? Third, the proposed development will irrevocably change current stormwater runoff patterns, which feed a seasonal marsh and vernal springs and pools in a critical environmental area, the During Estate. This is relevant to my final point. In January 1st, 2025, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation amended the Freshwater Wetlands Act. These amendments expanded the DEC's jurisdiction over freshwater wetlands and changed the way wetlands are mapped and classified. The DEC can now regulate freshwater wetlands of any size if they are considered of unusual importance. The DEC also revised the classification system for freshwater wetlands. The new state laws that small wetlands will be regulated if they meet one of 11 newly established criteria. The knoll meets more than most. In light of this, will you vote to protect the knoll and ensure our village complies with all of New York State's freshwater wetlands regulations? Thank you.
David Santini, 104 Briary Road. This first slide shows what the developer claims are existing conditions for his proposal. He shows that all 4 lots that he controls extend to the center line of the former paper road known as the Knoll. We now know that he's doing this to absurdly imply that he can use all of this area to calculate the size of his lots. Likewise, absurdly, he does not show that any of the other lots on the knoll extend to that same center line, but in fact they all do.
This board has given every indication during this review process that it believes that the developer has a legal right to build a roadway across privately owned land in order to gain access to his property so he can build spec houses for profit. Never mind that the attorney for our Protect the Knoll group has put forth legal arguments and cited case law which should have stopped this proposal dead in its tracks. Never mind that the Knoll Paper Road was demapped by the Board of Trustees in 2005 with the express intent that it never be built upon. Never mind that the proposed roadway would violate the conservation easement contract that the village signed in 1999. For whatever reason, the members of this board seem to believe that the developer has the right to build an access road. Although we strongly disagree with this, let's imagine for argument's sake that it is true. This next slide shows the proposed stormwater management plan. Next. As you can see, the developer intends to build a grass swale all the way up to the Juring Preserve. He does not own these properties, and he doesn't need these properties in order to gain access to his own lots. He has absolutely no right to touch these properties, even by the planning board's method of thinking. I want it to be on the record that my wife and I own 3 of the lots on the knoll. These lots extend to the center line of the former Knoll Paper Road, and we do not give the developer permission to install a swale across them. I'm afraid the developer must revise his plans. But what's behind the developer's desire to install this swale? His attorney has proudly proclaimed that its purpose is to capture stormwater runoff and force it to go through the developer's attenuation gallery. Such an altruistic plan. Who actually believes the developer is truly concerned about the flooding in this neighborhood? Is there possibly another motive for wanting this swale? Maybe the developer hopes he can slip his grass swale idea through the cracks of the review process so that he can then claim that if he can install a swale on this property, he could also build a road on it. Is the swale merely laying the groundwork for a future roadway? As possible proof, look at the table shown on the next slide. On the developer's tree removal plan. It shows the trees that have been identified to be affected by the road development. Included in this table are numbers 42 through 59. Although these trees are located in the grass swale area, the developer identifies them as road development affected trees. Did the developer's landscape architect inadvertently reveal the developer's true intentions? I wonder. Thank you.
I'm Susan Santini, 104 Briery Road. I'm pleased to read a letter from Caroline Rowan, a neighbor who cannot be here tonight. Here is her letter. My name is Caroline Rowan, and I live at 62 Briery with my husband Regan and our 3 children. We were unable to attend the last meeting, but we watched in support from our home, and we loved hearing what our neighbors had to say. All unique experiences, but sharing a common thread: protect the knoll. 62 Briery is the home we moved into nearly 10 years ago with our 2 toddlers. It's the home that helped comfort me after suffering several losses. And most importantly, it's the home that welcomed our 3rd and final child, our rainbow baby, a daughter, who we decided to name Briar in honor of it. It's rather fitting that today is her 7th birthday. When I thought about what I could contribute to the Protect the Knoll efforts, it dawned on me, what better to speak of than my home, one of the longest standing houses in the neighborhood. It's a place that has given me so much and who deserves my speaking up for her now. Our home is special, so special that in almost 100 years we are only the 3rd family to live in it. The first family were the Foxes, who built the house during the Depression and lived there until its beautiful but very steep steps could no longer carry them up to it. The second family were the Elberts. Like the Foxes, the Elberts lived in the house for the entirety of their lives. I feel a deep connection to the families who came before us, but it's Shirley Elbert, the home's 2nd matriarch, whom I always felt the most akin to. Like me, Shirley was a mother to 3 children, a dutiful homemaker, and she loved nature and gardening. If her name sounds familiar, it's because you may have seen it on the Shirley Elbert Memorial sign at the Briary Road entrance to the Juring Nature Preserve. It was Shirley who in the 1960s spearheaded the fight to prevent developers from subdividing and clearing the land to build spec houses. Sound familiar? It was Shirley who loved her home so dearly, she did everything in her power to protect its surroundings. And it was Shirley who stood before your predecessors all those years ago, as I am now, fighting the same fight and winning it. Winning 76 acres of nature, trees, animal, and resources for this community. The Knoll was a part of that. The land the Fox children, the Elbert children, and now our children have grown up on. It's part of our home. So here I am, speaking for the Foxes, the Elberts, and my neighbors, to remind you of this important history. I urge you to be on the right side of it, just as your board members were previously. Thank you.
Mark Sudak, 23 Highland Avenue. On the left-hand side is a screenshot of what appears to be a co-dominant tree on the developer's landscape plan, with one stem measuring 18 inches and the other stem measuring 24 inches. This is tree number 43 on the map, and if we look at the chart on the right, we see that this tree has been identified as an 18-inch diameter oak. The next slide shows several methods outlined by New York State DEC and Village Code to measure co-dominant trees. None of these methods give us a value of 18 inches. As it turns out, the plan is wrong on several counts. Next slide. Here's a photo of the trees in question. Good luck finding the 18-inch diameter oak in this picture because it doesn't actually exist. The tree on the left-hand side is a 16-inch bitternut hickory, and the tree on the right-hand side is a 26-inch black oak. The species is incorrect on the plan. Additionally, the measurements are 2 inches off, and the larger of these two trees is not accounted for at all. Site plan and chart need to account for 2 separate trees, not one co-dominant tree. I'll also add that Dobbs Ferry Village Code states that a tree that splits into two trunks close to the ground, the DBH of that tree should be the sum of the DBH of both stems. So even if this was a true co-dominant oak, the measurement would still be wrong. So this begs the question, what other misinformation exists on this site plan? How can we trust the tree map if the individual who mapped the trees can't tell the difference between an oak and a hickory, and additionally was 2 inches off on their measurements? With this new information, it would be to the benefit of the planning board to request that a new survey be submitted with the correct tree species and diameters. Additionally, at the developer's expense, a tree inventory should be conducted by an ISA certified arborist in order to check the work of the surveying team. Last month, I outlined critical root zone diameter as per village code, and I also shared with the planning board a list of protected specimen trees and prohibited activities in the zone. Since last month, I've identified and measured 2 more protected specimen black oaks with DBH measurements of 30 and 38 inches, meaning that their CRZ radius measurements are 45 feet and 57 feet. Once again, they do not appear on the site map, and most importantly, they stand within the conservation easement on lot 146. As the oak I brought to your attention last month, it is clear that the CRZ of the larger of the 2 oaks completely engulfs the proposed water retention center on lot 147. Chairman Hale, last month prior to the presentation of the Knoll, an application for a storage shed was brought before the planning board. You, Mr. Chairman, made it a point to mention tree protection requirements for trees surrounding that shed. In doing so, you've now signed a verbal contract with the Protect the Knoll group that you and the planning board will enforce tree protection protocols outlined in village code to protect large specimen trees found in and around the Knoll. As of tonight, I've now brought to your attention 3 protected specimen trees, 2 of which stand on a conservation easement, all of which stand on private property, and all of which have root zones that would spill into proposed construction zones. Once again, I want to make it clear to the planning board that by approving this project, not only will we be ignoring village code, but now additionally, Mr. Chairman, will be contradicting your own statement made at last month's meeting. Thank you.
Gabrielle Jaden, I live at 23 Summit Terrace. Last month, I was here to talk to you about the seeker determination regarding the environmental impact of the removal of an estimated 1,300 tons of rock and soil from an area that is contiguous with the Juring Nature Preserve. Today, I'd like to bring your attention to the impact this would have on the residents who live in homes near or on the edge of the rocky hill that we call the Knoll. Rock removal will require drilling or pile driving and perhaps even blasting. It's shocking that this might be permitted right in the center of a residential area near to homes that are almost 100 years old. How will the property be protected from damage? Is it even possible with this project? Will the developer be required to conduct pre- and post-construction surveys of these homes? Will he be required to set up an escrow account to take care of damage? And then who will oversee and manage all of that? According to an engineering expert, blasting through 5 to 20 feet of bedrock is a lot like fracking. It can dramatically alter how water flows to every home downhill, cause major ground instability, and jeopardize our neighborhood safety. In fact, just down the road on Shady Lane, there's a house that never had flooding until there was drilling further up on Briery, and that house was about a city block away. So these are things that we need to think about with all the rock removal and whatever methodology they use. So how would you and how would the developer be made to consider this? Moreover, the developer's plan would disrupt the Juring Preserve, a vital ecological area, by jackhammering through bedrock that connects directly to it. This threatens not only our natural habitat, but also the health and well-being of our entire community. Responsible development means every step must be carefully examined before any work begins. This is another important issue you need to consider in your decision. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Adrienne Sanders Kay. I live at 5 Summit Terrace, just above the construction site. 9 words. Anyone who has ever visited my family on Summit Terrace has said the same 9 words after they drive up the blind curve, the steep, narrow area that is Heather Way. How do you get up here in the winter? How do you get up here in the winter? Sometimes it's followed by, it's beautiful up here, but that hill, I could never. The truth is, it is treacherous, and not just in the winter. It is also just yards from the proposed construction site. The number of times trucks have driven into the rocky sidewalls or been stuck in the middle of that steep, tight turn blocking traffic is more than I want to count. Can you imagine families with babies in strollers, people with groceries, elderly parents leaving their cars at the bottom of a hill and walking up to their homes in the dark of night because a truck is stuck on a turn? If you know Heather Way, it's actually really easy to imagine. We have lovely neighbors. You've met many of them. You've met many of us. These are respectful, responsible people. But you'd never want to pass any of us by car on Heather Way. It is a near collision every time. There is simply no room for 2 cars to pass safely at the same time. That is to say nothing of school buses, delivery trucks, visitors walking dogs into the Juring estate, and children walking to their bus stops at the top and bottom of Heather Way. It is a near collision every time. There are no sidewalks, no shoulders, and no room for error. As the mother of 2 new drivers, I can tell you it is terrifying. Sincerely, it's impossible to imagine that area at the bottom of Heather Way being more clogged and cluttered with obstacles, construction crews, more trucks, debris, tree cutters, and the like. And as you know, also at the bottom of Heather Way is the entrance to the Juring Preserve, one of the few expansive wooded areas left in Dobbs Ferry and all around. And like so many who've spoken to you before, my family chose to move to Dobbs Ferry over other towns because of those peaceful and what we thought were protected woods. You know, there are 9 words, there's another 9 words that people used to say after visiting our home for the first time, even longtime residents of the area. Wow, I never knew this street was up here. No longer. Today, everyone is aware of the ill-conceived hastily approved, and potentially tragic development at the heart of the Knoll. Today, all eyes are on Dobbs Ferry. Please do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Brooke Knoll, 21 Summit Terrace, Dobbs Ferry. Sorry, you have another mom talking to you, so you're going to hear more about traffic and kids. My name is Brooke Knoll, and my family and I live on the corner of Summit Terrace and Heather Way. We have been in our house, as of tomorrow, 18 years. I am standing up here tonight not just for my family, but for the children on our block and down our hill, and the future families who have their eyes on Dobbs Ferry as a great place to raise their children. When you think of the pay it forward concept, you often think of paying for the car behind you in line at our local Starbucks. However, for the purpose of tonight, I would like to highlight and underline this concept of paying it forward and apply it to our village. How can we make choices now about development, codes, hill grades, busy intersections, easements, and then pay it forward to our future village members? Next slide, please. Thank you. I live on a hill that is way too steep, with a walk to the bus stop that is way too perilous, and endure miserable walking and biking conditions. I had to get an e-bike, our hill's so steep, because of development choices that happened years and years ago. I can't undo these decisions, but I can take a stand and ask that we prevent an already dangerous situation from getting riskier. I do not enjoy driving up and down my hill, even on a beautiful, sunny, dry day. I really can't stand it in bad weather. I've had to abandon my car on cold nights and walk up the icy hill with young children because our house on Summit Terrace, in short, on top of a steep mountain, and we just can't get there. I frequently witness the UPS truck flying up and down while children are walking to and from school, which they have to do because a bus can't even make it up our street. When we faced terrible dry conditions this fall, I was terrified that a fire would start enduring and the fire trucks would not be able to make it up and down our street due to poorly parked cars and rare enforcement from the village. I'm standing here and vehemently, actually, next slide, please, Jason, thanks. I'm standing here and vehemently asking that we protect the Knoll so we can pay it forward and set the precedent to prioritize our community, our current and future inhabitants over development, because I can tell you quite frankly that our neighborhood, our streets, to be grim, are an accident waiting to happen. We do not need one more car, one more delivery truck, one more near miss in bad weather. Next slide. To focus on the positive and to be proactive, here's a list of what we can do to entertain development in the neighborhood. We can get safe routes to school, clear designated greenways for people like us, bike lanes, I don't know, sidewalks. We need clear no parking signs as well as far more additional no parking signs, especially at the corner of Briery and Secor. I invite all of you to come between 7:30 in the morning and 8:45 a.m. on a weekday when Masters families, Dobbs Ferry's families, Ardsley families are zooming through our neighborhood. Thanks for your time.
Hi, Heidi Libby, One Briery Road, also a mom, also talking about safety and concerns, but I'm at the very bottom of Briery and Ashford, and my concerns at the moment have more to do with this crazy plan actually happens, the trucks leaving the site and coming down all those steep hills because that's the only way out. And it's blind curves, there are no sidewalks. There are 2 bus routes that go through and pick up the kids for Dobbs Ferry. 8 times they go through between Ashford, Shady, up to Secor, and then out. And so there's a blind curve that was shown in several maps as you're coming from Secor down Briery. And buses go up that. They don't come down it. Buses do not come down Briery, they go up. And all those trucks will come down. And there are a lot of kids in the area because they walk to school or they're waiting at bus stops. I've also have concerns of where all your trucks will be staged for construction, because when there's just minor road work being done in Ashford, it's outside of my house. The amount of times that I've had to hunt down some construction worker so that I could go to work, take my kids to school, or just do anything in the neighborhood because there are 3 trucks lined up blocking my driveway. And that's for a day. I heard tonight that this is 2 years. There's gonna be 2 years of trucks going down my street, blocking my driveway, and affecting kids getting to and from school and waiting for the bus stop. That just seems ridiculous on top of every other concern that my neighbors have said. So from the bottom of the hill, we don't want all the top of the hill coming down. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Asaf Cohen, 18 Secor Drive. I was going to highlight a letter that was written by our own Dobbs Ferry Traffic Committee, basically showing that what we're talking about is not just individuals who are threatened by this project, but our own village is not happy with a lot of the proposals. Before I say that, I just want to highlight that Dobbs Ferry is a community. You guys, a lot of you are volunteers doing what you're doing, and a lot of us, everyone here is being humble, a lot of us do a lot of things for our community. So we do ask that you think about the impact that this project might make on people who really care about this village. I'll give you an example. I've coached Little League, I've coached basketball, rec basketball, and a lot of the people here have done way more than me. You know, Peter Jocelyn was the Dobbs Ferry Youth Little League president. So when a lot of us, and people more than me who have contributed a whole lot, are unhappy with the way the village is going about this, I think we should listen. To go back to the letter real quick, the traffic committee is basically agreeing with a lot of the things that everyone just said. So they have issues with the access road, issues with the sidewalks, the fact that there's, what will be with sidewalks, and the fact that it'll be a cul-de-sac. So you have the letter from our own traffic committee, but basically, the worry is everything that was just mentioned, that the road fails to meet village code, that it doesn't have sufficient setback from existing buildings and lot lines, that it's going to put the nearby driveways out of compliance, and it will exacerbate stormwater that we discussed, and speeding, that's going to be a big problem too. That was just discussed as well. Sidewalks, it would be amazing to have sidewalks if we do build a road, an access road. As was mentioned, there's no really sidewalks in the whole area. I have 4 kids. It's very scary to walk there, especially with people speeding. And if we add sidewalks, how much bigger do we make this road? And finally, the cul-de-sac, as was mentioned, if we have a very thin cul-de-sac, how do fire trucks get up there? How can they turn? How can they help houses that could be in jeopardy in time? Thank you.
The letter has been entered into the record.
Hi, my name's Andy Roberto. I live at 56 Luzerne Road. This should be kind of easy. I want to thank you all for the information that you gave earlier. You addressed some of the things that I wanted to talk about, mostly to do with the process. A lot of us aren't really familiar with the whole process. We've finished pre-planning meetings, and now we're in the public hearing stage. We're not quite sure what happens after this, and we're not really quite sure of what elements of the process were supposed to have been fully completed or resolved in pre-planning, and what elements are being addressed now during the public meetings, and when are the responses met for these things. It seems to us, some of us, that there may have been some issues that were presented in pre-planning that we haven't had answers for. We haven't had many answers at all. There's been some confusion, but not much clarification. So items that were addressed in pre-planning that weren't responded to, either whether it was by the developer or by
the planning board or even the Board of Trustees, is it possible for you to give us kind of an overview of what the process is? Is there a way to see that so that we kind of understand what needs to be covered when are there, when are questions that haven't been answered from day one supposed to be resolved? We, I guess, are not really clear. You guys answered a lot of questions when we sat down before. I was very happy to hear a lot of things sort of kind of came up. And I was glad to hear it, but had no idea or wasn't expecting to hear those things. So I guess regarding, now I'm going to look at the sheet of paper. Regarding code compliance, variances, abutters rights, the SEQRA issues, and other similar issues, when are these things supposed to be resolved? You began to answer a bunch of those things earlier, so it was very nice to hear it. But is there a way for you to give us sort of more of a broad picture? Like, are they going to cut trees down before we see floor plans or building house plans? Or are we going to answer some of these questions that seem to us to be very relevant legal issues before 150 trees are cut down? Is there a way for you to respond?
Yeah, let's jump into that for a second. Valerie has offered to describe the process.
Sure. So basically, the pre-planning process is just for the board to look at and make sure that the information that has been provided is complete enough so that the application can begin like what we call the state environmental quality review process, which is that seeker process, which identifies all the impacts, right? So if the board receives an application that doesn't have enough information in terms of the applicant's position on zoning, nor it doesn't have enough information, at least what it is that they're proposing to do, it's very difficult to even begin the environmental review process. So that's what really the pre-planning phase, pre-planning submission process is. It's really just looking at the application. Once the board feels that this application has enough information to understand what it is that the applicant is proposing, that's when it starts going through the technical review and starts off with the seeker process. The seeker process needs to be absolutely complete before the board can even move forward in undertaking any sort of site plan approval process or any sort of approval process. So the seeker process itself identifies, as you know, all the environmental impacts, and the applicant needs to respond and provide analyses as well as information as to how the project is mitigating those particular impacts or doesn't have an impact on the various different seeker topics. So that's where we are right now. The board opened up a public hearing specifically because they've been receiving a lot of letters and also wanted to hear the public's feedback and concerns so that we can incorporate some of that into the overall environmental analysis, which is what we were talking about tonight, and also what the attorney noted in terms of additional information that's needed for to confirm a number of the legal issues. So the board can't, and I'll turn over to Dan for him to talk about what the board when the legal issues come into play. But basically, the board, the project has to meet zoning. So whether ultimately if the planning board finds that there are certain variances that are necessary, then the application will actually end up having to get referred over to the zoning board of appeals for their review of the application. Right now, we're still, I'm going to say, because this is more complicated in the vetting stages in terms of the environmental impacts and also the legal issues to be identified, and then finally will determine which boards they ultimately go to. But the ZBA won't be able to make, if this application has to go to another board, they also cannot make any determinations or approvals until the seeker process is done. So that's the first and foremost thing, and that's really what we're dealing with now, and then as well as some of the legal aspects. Dan?
Yeah, and just, quickly, the question about trees coming down and other things happening before this is final, that won't happen. The building department is not going to issue permits unless this board has issued a final resolution of approval. And whether it issues a resolution of approval or not is based upon the information that Valerie has mentioned that gets submitted by all of you, by the applicant, everybody's consultants, and we go through it and, make sure whether we're satisfied or not. But again, we couldn't put a time frame on this because a lot of it depends upon the applicant's responses. Just to go back to one other point, the idea that we opened up the public hearing to try to rush something through, which a couple people mentioned the last time, is the exact opposite of the reason why we opened the public hearing. We wanted to get all of this input, and we wanted it on the record. So, you could come to all of the pre-meetings and make all comments, but, they may not make it into a legal record. By coming now, and, at what we felt was the earliest time possible, you have the opportunity to go on record with, your issues, your complaints, that this board will have to factor into its analysis of the overall project. That's really all I've got.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
And the public hearing will remain open until such time as this application is really deemed complete. So it could be for many months. Right.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a suggestion, which is that, and Valerie, you're welcome to trumpet. So this, I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at this menu. This is what Valerie went through today. I would say that my sense was, at first I want to say I really appreciate the public presentation, which is amazing, well thought out, and is very respectful to kind of do that and not just ramble on. It's very clearly rehearsed. It's great. I think what would be really useful at this point would be for you all to give yourself some time limit, and given the amount of thought you've given it, I would say something you should be able to be doing in a couple of weeks, would be to use this document, do a save as, and if there's, because I have to be honest with you, I feel like the majority of the things I heard are things that we have, at least in this document, asked for the developer. Maybe not all of them, and that's where what I think might be useful as an exercise is for you all to look through this and do a save as and make very specific and targeted questions about what it is specifically you are concerned about. Because, for instance, there was a lot of concern raised about traffic. We're asking for a traffic study. Now, if there is a way that you can say, like, for instance, Matthew Comedy raised the issue specifically of the conforming to the sightline issues related to trucks and so on. So that is, if you want to enter into this document a bullet point that says that, puts a finer point on something that's already in here, that would be the most useful thing for everybody, I think. And I'm not talking about cutting and pasting the body of a letter you've written into this. That doesn't help at this point. What helps at this point is for you to say specifically, under, let's say if the issue was raised about species, about the impact on protected species. We talked about that, I thought, but you all, if you want to go in here and list specifically the ones that you want to make sure the developer addresses, then do that. That would be the most helpful thing, I think, for everybody. Now, I don't know, Valerie, how you...
No, I mean, I think, right, I think, right, and I think the difficulty is right now is that we're waiting on a lot of information from the applicant. So once the applicant does provide that information, then it'll probably be even easier for people, like, once we have the traffic study, then if there is information that's missing, that's when it's going to be easier for us to identify, like, oh, the site distances wasn't part of it, so we're going to ask that information. But right now, we're waiting on a lot of information from the applicant.
But I mean, if there's something specifically, like, I mean specifically, that's not listed here, as, because we can't just tell somebody that we don't like it, right? We have to say, here are the things that we're concerned about in very specific terms, and here are the things we expect you to address. So, I mean, I think it would be a useful exercise and would, in order to satisfy your concerns, to make sure that those are in the lists of things that we're asking the developer to address.
Just a quick note on that, you know, we don't want 140 of those, you know? I think, you know, if the group can somehow coalesce with it.
Yeah, no, I think,
gone
right,
with
you, the Protect the Knoll
presentations,
needs
which are very
to
good.
give us, right, give us a document that says, here are the line-by-line things that we want to make sure the applicant addresses. Exactly. Yeah, we don't want to synthesize, like, try to synthesize and like, oh, everybody's, and you all have your act together, clearly, so I don't think that's too much that, for you to do. And I think the more specific you can be about it, the more, like, useful it will be for everybody. But as Dan was saying, you know, they have to get, they don't get approval until they've satisfied everything, and the public hearing can remain open as long as we want to leave it open. So opening it up was, as Dan was saying, was a way to try to enable you all to have input into what we're asking from the developer as soon as possible, earlier in the process.
My name is Lynn Sudak. I live at 23 Highland Avenue, Dobbs Ferry. I've been here for 30 years. Thank you all for your time. I am the wrap-up person for Protect the Knoll tonight, so I'm the final speaker for us, although I don't know if there are other people who want to speak to this. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, as you have read in our many letters and heard in our presentations over the last 2 meetings, we have serious questions and concerns regarding the proposal to develop the knoll. Just to quickly review, these include, just going to say a few, violation of the Dobbs Ferry Vision Plan, potential decline of property values for the abutting neighbors, environmental impact, violation of village code regarding tree and natural resource preservation, potential effect on other DMAP paper streets in Dobbs Ferry, potential impact on safety in the neighborhood. Over these last 2 meetings, we have stated our case based on the information we have thus far. However, as you have acknowledged tonight, our participation in this process should not end here tonight. These issues have yet to be addressed by this board and the applicant, although you made it clear that you are trying to get some answers. If and when these issues are addressed, we may have further questions and new concerns, and we should have opportunities to voice those as well, as we stand to lose the most should this project be approved. So we thank you for stating that you will keep the public hearing open, and we assume that you will vote on that tonight. Thank you.
I know I wasn't on that list. My name is Vincent Coulihan, 27 Allen Street, a lifelong resident of the village of Dobbs Ferry. My family has over 114 years in the village. I'll keep it very, you asked for that, whatever document to be written on, Robert. I've submitted comments twice to the planning board. How do I know as a citizen that you got them? To me, it just like goes into somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? I have no confirmation that my comments, and I had comments because I listened to the developer's proposal. I also know that there have been presentations here. I'm a huge advocate for safety. I am an engineer. And there was a document provided to the village. Maybe you got it, but I think you did, because on May 30th, 2024, they raised several issues. As a citizen and a taxpayer, I think most of these people are taxpayers. I believe they are, but I'm going to speak for myself. I don't accept risk needlessly. When you have to weigh something out of the convenience of something else, that's not good. I'll give you an example. I'm a firefighter for 50 years. The village of Dobbs Ferry, I'm not a Dobbs Ferry fireman. We have codes now to have sprinklers in homes for one simple reason. It's life safety. It's life safety, okay? Or they have families that live in the area there. I live on the other side of Ashford Avenue, but I certainly understand what these families are up against, okay? So if they're going to have a road that is not compliant, I do not want to inherit a liability as a taxpayer. There are communities around us, and probably in Dobbs Ferry too, where they've been litigated because of liability. And our families are not willing to, A, lose someone or something because of, we're going to waive something. So if they're going to design something, they need to engineer it so that it is safe and compliant, period. Much like we have rules now that you don't use asbestos, you don't use lead, because they're dangerous. Likewise, you have a street that doesn't meet the code, there's a reason for that, because people have died. And it doesn't give a person an exemption just because Dobbs Ferry is an old village and there are hills here. There's no free pass for that. Just like saying, because there are houses that are 50, 60 years old and they don't have sprinklers in their homes, that they don't have to sprinkler these houses. So again, I put it back on the developer to provide. And then lastly, how do I know my comments were included? Because there's nowhere for me to check. I've submitted them twice and I have no confirmation. None. Thank you.
Well, I can understand what the process is. We get every letter, huh?
Yeah.
There is not a stick of correspondence that we do not get.
Right.
And this document, gentlemen, who just, okay? Never mind.
Also, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was saying, every letter that we get becomes part of the record, number one, the legal record, and we see it and we read every stick of correspondence. This document represents Valerie's, and I think pretty heroic attempt to take all those letters and all the other kind of best practices that have been raised and put them into this document. So if you go through this document and you say, well, wait a minute, I made a comment in a letter that was not picked up here, then tell us specifically what it is and we'll put it in. I mean, we've made our best, we're doing our best to kind of get everybody's stuff into this. So.
Right, just for clarification, the stuff in this memo is not individually listed everyone's comments. It talks about you need like a stormwater pollution prevention plan, right? Provide erosion sediment control, provide information on slope stability, right? So when everybody raises concerns about what's going to happen with the, construction in the hillside in my house, that all gets lumped into they need to provide information on slope stability. So I just want to make it clear that if you're looking at that letter, it's not on every comment now. Right, but the topic areas.
Not literally, but
right.
Maybe not literally, but the topic area.
Yeah, the topic areas.
The issue should be covered here, even if it isn't in your exact words.
I'm looking at your letter right here, so your comments. So
There's no way for me to know that you got it.
yeah, it needs to be some feedback, right? Yeah.
Well, you could also.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to say, you could drop your correspondence off to the building department or to the village clerk. The village clerk could stamp it in when she gets there.
Goes one direction, no confirmation.
If you were listening, I just said, if you deliver it to the building department, they can stamp it for you.
No, I know, Danny.
Yeah. No, but I'm talking for everybody.
There's an electronic version. There's an electronic version that the village has.
Yeah.
And that's how I use it. I mean, I'm a busy guy. And I'm trying to come down, and these guys are busy. So I comply with the requirements of the board. And all I'm asking is, how do I know it got there? That's it. Because if you don't want electronic feedback, get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
No.
I have no idea what happened. That means you received it.
Yeah, no, I have it. I'm looking at it.
No, I don't buy it. Not, sorry, thank you. Thank you, I understand. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
So, excuse me, my name is Mario Romagnoli, 27 Hilldale Road. So I'm puzzled. Now, I've been to, I think this is my 5th meeting, and at one of the preliminary meetings, the end of last year, the builder had his plans up, and he mentioned that they were calculating the lot size from the center line of the road. So I thought that was kind of peculiar, but I'm not an engineer. I'm just a simple country doctor on the Upper East Side. Now, last month, there was a very eloquent presentation of how this is pretty sketchy, okay?
Now, so you were all put on notice that there was someone out there who was paying attention that the lot calculations were pretty sketchy. My expectation when there was a second presentation tonight is that someone on the board would tell us if there is a legal or zoning precedent in the village, the town, the county, or the state to calculate lot sizes from the center line of a road, because it still seems to me to be really sketchy. So I ask the question, is there a legal precedent?
Oh,
No.
let me just say that,
No, is there? I'm not just, let me ask.
that
I have a
question
lawyer
is
here.
open. That's one of our open questions that
Okay,
we're trying to get answered.
give me a legal opinion. Is there a legal precedent that you're aware of?
We're waiting on the applicant to provide something.
Well, you're a lawyer. Can't you go look up a
It's not-
code?
But it's not as easy as that. Sal.
Don't you know the state code, the village code?
It's not run by the state code. It's not.
Well, what the local code? Does the local code have provision for calculation of a lot size in this manner? Yes or no?
You know what? I'm not going to be put on the spot, and I'm not going to answer.
Okay, good.
This
Thank
is
you.
a complicated issue,
Okay,
and the
right.
question is open,
By
and
the way-
we're working
Okay,
on it.
so
by the way,
I think no matter which side you voted for the last election, it may have taken your notice that people are dissatisfied with the responsiveness of government. So what's going on here, I realize that you are all volunteers and you're doing your best, but this is the third or the second time this has been brought up. And saying, oh, we're waiting for a response. Who are you waiting for a response from? From the builder?
We've asked him to answer that.
Okay, and so isn't there some other authority?
There will be as part of the process. I mean,
Okay.
this is
So
going
where
to
is the
take many months.
So where are we in the process? So my question is, you know, if a patient comes into me and asks me a question about, you know, well, what they can catch from a deer tick bite, and they ask me, can you get such and such a disease, and I don't know the answer, I go and look it up. So the question is, there are law books, you can go online, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure you are, and you could do this. So you could find out, gee, there's no precedent for this. And then you could tell the people here, you know, that's a good point, and there is no precedent that we know of. That's all you have to say. You're still going to make your decision. Anyway, that's all.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Cristina Perez Jimenez, and I'm a resident of 22 Lucerne. And I'm also here to express my and my family's really strong opposition to this project, which is adjacent to the During Preserve. I mean, to sit here and be told that it's not adjacent, I just, you know, look at a map. That just, I mean, the definition of adjacent, it's sort of mind-blowing to me. And if I'm angry or I'm frustrated, please know that it's not directed at any of you. I am incredibly thankful for your service, for all you do for your community. But, you know, like many people here, I feel extremely frustrated and angry at the process, you know, how this process continues to roll out. Like, why are we here? And I say this because, you know, initially when the Board of Trustees kind of punted this issue and washed their hands out of it, of which I'm also angry about, the sense was like, these are property owners, they have property rights, right? And I'm like, I also have property rights. And as a property owner, if I want to change the kitchen counter or the windowsill of my window, I come here and I put a proposal. And I feel like if I came here and I brought a proposal full of factual lies, of mischaracterizations, immediately would shut me down. You would say, lady, go home and come back and bring a document that is accurate. And, you know, the fact that this continues open when we've outlined, you know, lie after lie after lie, mischaracterization, I just don't understand that. So the anger and the frustration, at least on my end, is coming from that point. I just want to mention a few things that came up here, you know, during the presentations that resonated with concerns that I have. seeing that road up there, like going past the proposed development, raises a big issue that I have. Initially, this was put as like 1 or 2 houses. Eventually, it got put forth as a 4-house project. But to me, it seems clear that this is not 4 houses. The developer is strategically securing permits for home nows. But once this road is created out of nowhere for passage, right? This DMAP paper road that does not exist, and it's a road in which my children go sledding there in the winter, where they've sold lemonade, where it is used as a community space and a play space. I mean, I see that my children use it in the summer. They've gone a sledding, etc. When this road, if this road is given permit to be manifested out of nowhere, there's really not going to be any guardrails, right, or safeguards to avoid further development. So suddenly we're talking about 8 houses instead of 4. So that's a concern that I have down the road. Flooding. I mean, I am not a scientist. I'm not an environmental, specialist. I don't know the legal definition of a floodplain, but I can tell you that if you live in a zone where every time there's heavy rain, half the houses, their basements flood, and the street is flooded, how is flood a minor or no concern? Like, I just don't understand that. The day I moved I've been a resident of Dobbs Ferry for only a year and a half. Literally the day our truck moved in, we found out that half the houses in our neighborhood, on Lucerne Street, had flooded. That's a big issue. Like, in the neighborhood, it's already a problem. And we can talk about stormwater management, we can talk about mitigating problems, but the fact is that we are destroying, I mean, this is 3rd grade science. If you take out trees, all root systems, and put concrete in it, how is the flooding and the water not going to be worse off? I mean, this is literally 3rd grade science. You don't need to be an expert. And 2 more things. I know I'm out of time, but this is my one opportunity to speak. The character of the neighborhood and being at During. I invite you, I implore that you take a walk to the During Preserve and enter through Lucerne, through my street, where me and my kids walk 2 or 3 times a week. And imagine taking that entrance and looking to your right, and instead of seeing the knoll, where you immediately feel like you're secluded, you're around woods, you see the beautiful deers, the turtles, the trees, all these species my kids and I identify as we walk through. Instead, you're seeing 4 development. 4 cookie-cutter houses sitting there. How is that not changing the character of a nature preserve? I just don't understand it. Walk, take a look, and it just completely transforms the nature preserve. And same thing with the character of this neighborhood. You saw that beautiful white house. One of the things that I loved about our community and our neighborhood was the charm of the houses, the historic character of the neighborhood. There's no single mass development of houses looking the same in the area. So it definitely changes the character. I know I'm out of time. I actually have a lot more to say, so I'll say it at the public hearing. Thank you so much.
Oh, good evening. My name's Walter Pastor. I live at 106 Briery. I wasn't slated to speak tonight. I spoke the last time. But there's something I want to bring to attention, because the more educated you are, the better decision you're going to make. Currently on the knoll, homeowners, PTK, own more than 3 times the number of property that the developer owns, okay? The swell that Dave talked about, I personally have a piece of property that butts up against that. One of those trees that he wants to cut down, so forth and so forth. The bald eagle picture you saw, I took that picture. That's up in those trees. 2 of the turtle pictures you see, me and my wife took those pictures. Every year, either May or June, the turtles come through our yard every year from Journey Estate down below. I live directly across the entrance to Journey Estate. They come directly through my yard, the Potenzas' yard. I caught them coming up there every year, okay? So what I'm saying is that as a group, the other thing I wanted to say is that the Village of Dobbs Ferry signed a resolution demapping the paper roads. Whether they did it right or they did it wrong, they did it. You heard a lot of people here say their realtors told them this is going to be woods forever, okay? Now, I can tell you the fact that so many PTK people own property up there. If in fact we knew that that road was not demapped and it was not put in a vision plan, it's never being developed, we'd own the entire knoll right now. I can tell you, we've tried, and because of the development and people thinking that if it goes through, that they're possibly going to do much better, we can't get it. okay? But I can tell you, if this fails, okay, I can almost rest assured, the people own property up there will not be stuck with it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else here? You'll have a chance next month.
This is the briefest possible presentation, Mr. Hale. The swell is part of the construction, is it not? It's on the construction plans.
Everything's preliminary at this point. We don't know what they're going to look like.
I'll ask again. The land is going to be disturbed along that swale in order to affect a swell. It's a construction zone, correct?
That's what he's proposing.
What he's proposing. Okay, take a look at the plans carefully again and note that the north line of that swale abuts the Juring estate. The project, which includes the swell, abuts the Juring estate.
Daniel Burgers, 52 Luzerne Road. I know everyone wants to go home. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you all reading our letters and taking the time and adding all the things that we brought up to be answered. I would just like to make a suggestion to the developer. Last year, you approved 2 houses to be built on 11 Lyman. I'll just invite the developer to build 2 houses there and move to the neighborhood. You see, it's an amazing community. Thank you very much. See you in April, next month.
Christina, is there anyone online who'd like to speak? No?
I know, it smells gotta be.
Excuse me, I want to say something. Well, if you want to say something, please come up to the microphone.
Just one last thing. If all this happens, we're gonna have to change the name, not the Dobbs Ferry Village, but City of Dobbs Ferry. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Please, come on.
Hi, Nancy Del Marco, 81 Grandview. I'm sitting here, again, like I said last month. 2000, 2002, 2004, 2005, we looked at the village and we didn't want a city. We demapped the roads. We made the LWRP, we made the vision plan, and I want to thank you, Rob, for pointing out that we can have community input in a new electronic way that didn't exist when all these plans, these open space initiatives were happening. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for having this public input, because that's part of the LWRP and the vision plan too. So thank you. I know you're volunteers, and we're all tired, but I just wanted to say thanks.
Okay, if no one else has anything to say this evening, I move that we continue the public hearing to the next meeting, which is April 3rd, I believe. Second, all in favor? Aye. Another 6 months. All right, is there any other business for us this evening? Okay. I move that we close the meeting.